Well, hello there, all of my fellow criminals. What's that? Oh no, you're all crooks by association. Because today we're going to talk about the evil and sinister world of emulation. I feel like a majority of people who have tried an emulator at least one time. Could be a number of reasons. Collecting old video games can be expensive. Could be doing it for quality reasons or just convenience. Maybe you want to play a hack of some kind. The reason is unimportant. What is important is that emulators allowed me to find and then want to go out and collect games of old. It was a fantastic way for me to play and experience the games I missed out during my childhood. Well, just recently I spoke about my favorite childhood game, Wonder Boy in Monster World, and because of the internet and emulation, I was able to find and experience the other games in the series. Well, after picking up my jaw from the floor after finding out there were more games in the series, I mostly focused my interests on the sequel, which isn't actually the game we're talking about today, because before we move forward, I feel we should take a step back. So let's talk about Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap. Specifically, Wonder Boy 3: The Dragon's Trap. And you do have to specify that it's Dragon's Trap because technically there are two Wonder Boy 3s. It released on the Master System in 1989, as well as a few other systems in the coming years, though a remake also came out in April of 2017, which is actually the version I'm going to be talking about. So, I mean, it can technically count for a memories and bytes. I imagine there are some engine changes, but it's essentially the same game with a new coat of paint, so whatever, we'll just roll with it. We start off our adventure in the last dungeon. Oh boy, progression is fast in this game. One thing you might notice is I'm a girl. You can just choose to play as Wonder Girl instead if you want to, and that's cool. Literally does nothing else other than change your human form, which you don't see much of. Anyway, I must have passed out or something, because I'm clearly at the end of the game. I'm overpowered as hell. I'm going around a maze and I'm one-shotting everything. And oh, what's this? An absolutely 100% not ominous boss door just standing in the middle of nowhere. In the beginning of this really overpowered section at the beginning of the game that is definitely not going to be some sort of trap. You then proceed to fight and destroy the Mecha Dragon, to be struck by the ghost and cursed. Well, as it turns out, it's a trap. What? I couldn't have seen that coming. If only the name Dragon's Trap gave me some sort of warning. That's like there were monsters in Monster World as well. Guys, I'm big braining. I'm seeing the answers. But there's no time to rest. The place is gonna collapse and you need to escape. You flee the castle and get this lovely title screen, signaling the beginning of your adventure. I really like this beginning section because it practically makes you a god to be able to get the basic controls down. What button does what and how you attack. Gives you a boss fight to test your new knowledge, then proceeds to make you weak as hell and starts the game proper. You arrive at a village which will be your main hub from here on out. Pretty much anywhere we need to go in the game starts here, but you kind of got to figure that out as you go, because the game doesn't tell you where you need to go. You just have to figure out, okay, what can I do in my current form and where can I go with said form? And that's generally how the game plays out. You're pretty much just left to your own devices. Explore around, see where you can go and how you can push forward. Although this gives the feeling of the game being quite open, it's more like a central point that splits into a bunch of paths, where the next path only opens when you've beat the path prior. Now, all these routes have different themes. You have a desert, a jungle, a volcano, a beach, an underwater section. They usually consist of one long pathway you need to walk down, defeating enemies to get up to a dungeon. And it's with that remark I come to my first complaint about this game. On the top of my list, it's level design. It's often screen after screen of just some enemies and maybe a hazard that you have to jump over from time to time, or just some singular gimmick. I mean, no, don't get me wrong, I understand it's a game made for the Master System, and props to the team for making this game look absolutely stunning, but yeah, that specific element definitely shows its age. Hey, and credit where credit's due, it's not in every section. There are some areas which kind of spice it up a bit, even more so in the final areas of the game. Another thing that also represents the era this game was made in is the difficulty. Yeah, this can be really tough your first time through. Maybe you don't know the best way to approach an enemy or the best equipment for your various forms, because you have to start in town. You have to go through the long path to the dungeon. You have to beat the dungeon and the boss all in one life, because if you die, you get thrown right back into town, which means you have to do all of what you did in that one section all over again. This can be a really big roadblock if you're not ready for a boss, or even more so if you're just having trouble with a screen. These enemies can hit hard. And the further you go up a path, the harder these enemies start to hit. Of course, there are other factors, like if you've been finding the hidden heart containers or keeping up to date with your armor and weaponry, which, man, it's almost like this game expects you to die, or at least expects you to grind in some manner, because these prices can be pretty steep sometimes. Plus, it can be hard to determine what you should get, considering different armor and weapons have different stats depending on what form you take. A piece of armor that gives 50 defense in mouse form could give 250 in lion form, so your purchases might be a bit trial and error, and a bit of grinding. And I guess since I have been talking about the forms as much as I have, there are more than just the dragon form. Each allow you to traverse the world in a different way, as well as have their own strengths and weaknesses. Firstly, you start with dragon form, which is just normal. The only real advantage this one has is that you have a ranged attack. You start off with this form, and with my experience, you don't really ever go back to it once you've unlocked a few more. The next is mouse form. That is one small boy, which means it can crawl in small gaps and stick to these checkered tiles. There are specific areas in this game which are tailored to this form, even in endgame, so I did find myself using mouse pretty much until the very end. Next up is the fish form, which lets you swim. I think it's pretty much normal other than that though, considering there are only a few sections in the game where swimming is essential. I found this form had limited uses. Next up is lion form. It's the best form, hands down. I feel like it has zero downsides. Big ass shield, huge overhead swing, which can even hit stuff on the floor, which is perfect for finding those hidden areas. Has the most damaging attacks and highest defense as far as I'm aware. It makes sense this is the second from last one you get. And last, but definitely not least, bird form. This allows you to fly with no limitations. Just go. This one is purely for utility because otherwise he's pretty average in defense and attack. But oh man, does it open up a whole new set of pathways to various secrets everywhere. So once you get this, depending on your want for completion's sake, you're going to be going over the whole game with a fine-tooth comb. If you're anything like me, as soon as you get lion and bird form, there are no other forms that are important. Well, until the game wants you to be mouse to do something specific. The thing to note though is that you can only change forms when you found one of these hidden statue rooms. Standing on the pillar in the center allows you to cycle through the forms you have, which does mean there has to be some planning in knowing what form you need to be to do a certain something. Obviously, since lion form is so powerful, I imagine this is used to basically balance the game in a way that you can't just steamroll it, forcing you to use a form to get over a specific obstacle and then continue down the path as that form. Well, at least until I found this. Hidden doors are pretty much my specialty. I have played Wonder Boy and Monster World my entire childhood. I'm pretty good at sniffing out these doors. I came across this one actually by mistake, jokingly pressing up being like, ha, it would be funny if there were a door here. Oh my god. It sells honestly the most overpowered sword in the game, and not because of its attack power. This sword allows you to change forms on the fly at any point. Yeah, you can probably see why that's broken, especially in the last dungeon, but I'm going to talk about that in a bit. In terms of gameplay, the only other thing the game offers you alongside these transformations is magic, and it's more arcadey style than it is a normal magic system with like MP and stuff. Enemies drop magic and you can use that magic. Think of it more like an ammo system, which unfortunately you lose all of when you die. It's one of those things where I feel like I need to try and teach myself to use it more because it's very useful. They're pretty much all ranged in some form, and the utility of being able to throw a tornado down a pit or shoot an arrow up to a flying enemy, none of your transformations offer you any way of dealing with that kind of stuff, so that's pretty useful. All these tools, weapons, armor, magic all help you in progressing through this, again, pretty tough game. The first time I touched this remake was the first time I had played Dragon's Trap in years and years and years, and I was super rusty. I pretty much didn't remember the game at all. There were a lot of struggles, a lot of deaths, especially in the final area. I remember this part just being specifically designed that if you don't have the Tasmanian sword, it puts you in certain forms in certain areas which they guarantee to do like a bunch of damage. So I actually think it's one of the more interesting parts of the game because it switches it up a lot. The level design is varied because it expects you to use the various forms you have. Of course, with the Tasmanian sword, things are easier because you can just choose whatever form you need to progress and then go back to lion form and continue destroying everything. It's just amusing that it can make pretty much the hardest part of the game into a walk in the park. Dragon's Trap is a fun, simple, tough action platformer which I really enjoyed playing. It doesn't quite capture the magic of Wonder Boy and Monster World for me, but I feel like that's probably due to its arcadey nature rather than it being a dedicated pixelated action RPG, despite the equipment and stuff. Playing the remake, you could honestly forget that this is a Master System game. The team just did a fantastic job of giving it stunning visuals and an amazing soundtrack. I live for remakes of old games in this art style. Like, it so successfully nails that hand-drawn look that I feel some games don't quite get. With this and then Streets of Rage 4 coming out later, it solidifies that this is the kind of art style I'd love to see remakes or continuations of retro games have. One extra feature I love about this remake in particular is that you can choose to have the retro graphics and sounds. If you just really love that Master System aesthetic, or you just want something different to look at your second time around, there is quite a nice handful of customizable old school options. Want to know what this makes me want though? I want a Wonder Boy and Monster World remake like this. I think that would be so good. Not that I'm biased or anything. I love what the team was able to accomplish here, and it's definitely making me look forward to any projects they do in the future. The only thing I was sad about was I couldn't get a physical copy, which I believe they had a limited physical run. I just remember not being able to afford it at the time and had to deal with the digital. Have you played the remake of Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap? And if so, what do you think? But once again, thank you for watching this episode of Pixelated Bites. Memories. Shit. Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode of Pixelated Memories. I hope you enjoyed it. Want to give a huge shout out to everyone who has been patient with me. I've had a few health problems that have been getting in the way, but I'm back on track. And as usual, big shout out to everyone who offers support to the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. That being said, if you liked the video, then throw us a like. And of course, hit that subscribe with the bell if you want to go that extra mile. I have 2 other videos you can check out there, as well as my various socials and my Twitch below. Also, apologies if the camera drooped at the end there because it's new setup, so kind of off. Anyway, see you next time.